In the autumn of 1977. The air was thick with the smell of coal ash and withered leaves. My husband, Leon Ford, and I had been married for just 3 years. Our life was simple and uneventful, but relatively peaceful. I stood at the factory gate, looking at the dusty brick walls and the large red slogans painted on them. And for a moment I felt as if I were in a dream. Wasn't I already dead? How could I be standing in this familiar place again? Yan Leah. What are you daydreaming about? Old Zhao, the gatekeeper, called out to me. Here to wait for Engineer Liang again. He went to the station to pick someone up. He said it was his brother's widow and child. I grunted in response and turned to leave. Old Zhao continued muttering behind me. Engineer Liang is such a kind man. Even after his friend died, he still cared for the man's wife and child. Kind man. A cold smile tugged at the corner of my mouth, and my pace quickened until I was almost jogging. In my past life, hearing these words would have filled me with gratitude, making me feel like I'd married a kind and compassionate man. I would have willingly given all my savings to help Liang Ford aid the poor widow Xiaojiu. But I was reborn. In my previous life, I was foolish my whole life. I was with Liang Ford for 50 years, believing we were a loving couple, until he died of a stroke. Xiaojiu came to my door with an 18-year-old son, clutching her marriage certificate with Liang Ford, and threw me out like trash. They said I was a nanny, a third party who had interfered in someone else's marriage, and that all the property, the house, and the savings belonged to Xiaojiu and that son. I vomited blood and collapsed on the cold floor. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in the autumn of 1977. Back to the day Xiaojiu and her child knocked on my door. I rushed into the house, panting, straight to the bedroom, and lifted the hidden compartment under the bed. The tin money box was still lying there peacefully. The key in the lock. Liang Ford never suspected me, because in my past life I was devoted to him, wanting nothing less than to show him my heart. I opened the box. Inside were neatly stacked stacks of 10 yuan notes, along with a thick pile of grain coupons, cloth coupons, meat coupons, and shoe coupons. This was all the savings we had accumulated over 3 years. I usually tried to stretch every penny, wearing patched clothes and eating plain porridge with pickled vegetables for meals. Liang Ford's salary wasn't low, and I also worked in the factory. Yet we still managed to save over 1,000 yuan, a considerable sum in those days. I stuffed handfuls of money and notes into my pockets, until they were bulging. After thinking for a moment, I left half in the box. Taking it all would be too conspicuous. Liang Ford would surely go crazy if he came back. I divided what I took into 2 parts, taking one part directly to the post office, filling in my mother's address, and mailing it all back. I took the other coupon to the supply and marketing cooperative, spent all my cloth and shoe coupons, bought 2 new outfits and 2 pairs of new shoes, and then went to the state-run restaurant on the corner and ordered a bowl of braised pork ribs, which I ate with gusto. By the time I was carrying my bags and swaying home, it was already getting dark. I saw Liang Ford hurrying towards me from the opposite direction. His gray-blue work clothes sleeves rolled up to his forearms, a smile on his face. But that smile froze for a moment when he saw the things in my hands. Leah, you went to the market? He quickly came to meet me, his eyes scanning the bundle in my hands. I opened it to him frankly. I haven't bought any new clothes in 3 years. I used all the cloth and shoe coupons I'd saved up to buy myself a few outfits and 2 pairs of shoes. Liang Ford's face darkened for a moment, but he quickly forced a smile. Go ahead and buy them. Whatever makes you happy. He paused, then said, Leah, there's something I want to discuss with you. I have something to tell you too. I interrupted, my voice crisp and bright. We've been married for 3 years, and I haven't sent a single penny back to my parents' home. My parents are getting old, and my brother is still in school. We're very tight on money. I sent all the money and coupons we'd saved back. You won't be angry, will you? Liang Ford's smile finally crumbled. His voice suddenly rose. What? You sent it all? That 1,000+ yuan? I looked at him innocently. Ford, are you angry? I was wrong. I won't do it again. Please don't be angry. Okay? He opened his mouth, hesitated for a long time, and finally forced down his anger, managing a smile that was uglier than crying. I'm not angry. Just let me know in advance next time if you need anything. I nodded obediently, but inwardly I was sneering. There won't be a next time. Liang Ford. This is the last time you'll let me play the fool. He continued, by the way. Leah. My brother. Brother Jiao. He passed away 3 years ago. You know. Before he died. He asked me to take care of his wife and children. Today his wife, Xiaojiao, came with the child. And I wanted to help them. Of course. I said understandingly. One should be loyal. Liang Ford breathed a sigh of relief. But my next words made his face darken again. Your salary has to support my parents. Take care of household expenses. And now you also have to subsidize Brother Jiao's widow. Is that enough? We agreed when we got married that I would take care of my parents and support my brother's schooling, so this family will depend entirely on you from now on. Ford. He was silent for a long time, finally managing to say, okay. When I got home, I symbolically went to the neighbor's yard to check on Xiaojiao and her crying child, then made an excuse to go buy groceries and cook. In my past life, at this time, I was busy cleaning Xiaojiao's house, making the bed, and cooking a big feast to welcome her back. Until my back ached. This time, I wasn't so foolish. Dinner was served, a pot of cornmeal porridge, a plate of stir-fried vegetables, and a dish of pickled radish strips. Liang Ford and Xiaojiao came in carrying the child, their faces not looking too good. Xiaojiao glanced at the meager meal on the table and curled her lip. Sister-in-law. Is this all you're eating? I said apologetically. I was late. The market was already closed. This is all that's left. I'll buy something better tomorrow. Just make do for today. Xiaojiao's face was ashen, and she left without eating. Liang Ford looked at the table and then at me, hesitant to speak. I shrugged. I wanted to cook something nice, but we're broke. And all the ration coupons have been sent back to my parents' house. How about you borrow some money to buy something better? I'll cook another meal. Liang Ford didn't go to borrow money. He was cleaning up Xiaojiao's house next door until midnight. And when he came back, he was covered in dust and collapsed onto the bed. I had my back to him, listening to his gradually even breathing. But I couldn't fall asleep. In the middle of the night, I heard noises from the neighbor's yard. She tiptoed to her feet and listened intently against the wall for a while. It was Liang Ford's voice. Hushed, keep your voice down. Don't wake Leah. Then came Xiaojiao's tearful complaint. How can anyone live in this shabby place? There's not even a decent wardrobe. And the blankets are all old. Ford. Go buy me a new wardrobe and new sheets tomorrow. Xiaobao is still so small. What if he gets rashes from sleeping on these old things? Liang Ford said impatiently. I have no money. Young Leah sent all of the 1,000+ yuan back to her parents' home. And I don't have a single penny left. How could she be like this? Xiaojiao's voice shrill. She wasn't, before what? Don't give me that nonsense. I'm just asking you. Didn't you insist on coming here? Once you're here, don't be so picky. I'm only thinking of you and our son. Isn't I? Xiaobao can only grow up well with his own father. Shut up. Liang Ford's voice lowered, tinged with malice. If you dare utter a single word of this outside, I won't let you off. I didn't listen any further and quietly retreated back into the room. Lying in the darkness. Xiaojiao's words. It wasn't like this before, kept replaying in my mind. What did she mean by before? Had she also been reborn? This thought sent a chill down my spine. If Xiaojiao had returned with memories of her past life like me, she would definitely notice my changes and warn Liang Ford to be wary of me. I turned over and pulled the blanket tighter around myself. I couldn't give myself away. In front of them, I still had to be that foolish, submissive young Leah. The next morning, I got up to heat up some corn porridge. Liang Ford, his face dark, sat in the main room, kicking over a stool. Young Leah, I didn't come home all night. And you didn't even ask. Do you even care about me? I glanced at him, holding my bowl, and said calmly, Ford, you went out in the middle of the night without telling me. How am I supposed to know where you went? I can't stay up all night waiting for you. Can I? He choked, glared at me for a long time, and finally slammed the door and left. No sooner had he left than Xiaojiao came over carrying the child, along with a bag of steaming buns and soy milk. A smug smile on her lips. Sister-in-law, why are you eating this again? Ford really doesn't know how to treat people. He bought buns, fried dough sticks, and soy milk for me and Xiaobao. But he makes you eat pig swill. Without saying a word, I reached out and snatched the buns and soy milk from her hands and started eating them in big mouthfuls. Xiaojia was stunned, then stomped her feet angrily when she realized what was happening. Give it back to me. Ford bought it for me and Xiaobao. Ford is my husband. Why can't I eat what he bought? I chewed on my bun, deliberately raising my voice. Besides, calling my husband away in the middle of the night and then having him buy you breakfast first thing in the morning, Comrade Gu. You're a widow with a child coming to stay with us. Shouldn't you be a little more mindful of your behavior? The alley was full of people going to work in the early morning, and they all gathered around when they heard the commotion. Xiaojio's face flushed bright red. I continued loudly. I've been married to Ford for 3 years. And I've never let him buy me breakfast. And you? You eat the steamed buns and soy milk my husband bought. And then come to me bragging about it. Saying corn porridge is pig swill. How can you be so shameless? The onlookers began to whisper, what kind of person is this? Eating someone else's husband's food and then showing it off in front of the main house? A widow with a child came to seek refuge. And she called her husband over in the middle of the night. What kind of behavior is that? Engineer Liang usually seems like a very upright person. How did he get into this mess? Xiaojio's face was so red it was almost bleeding. She grabbed her child, turned, and ran away, slamming the door shut with a deafening crash. I slowly finished my steamed buns and soy milk, wiped my mouth, and went to work. At lunchtime, a few gossipy aunties gathered around to ask what was going on. I recounted the whole story, ending with a sigh. Ford said he owed his brother a favor and wanted to repay it. Comrade Gu couldn't eat coarse grains, so he bought her breakfast. Comrade Gu was afraid of the dark, so he went to keep her company at night. Our Ford is just too kind-hearted. The aunties exchanged a meaningful glance. I knew that it wouldn't be long before news of Liang Ford keeping the widow company in the middle of the night spread throughout the entire factory area. And that was the effect I wanted. After get off work, I ate a good meal outside before heading home. As we neared home, Xiaojio emerged from the shadows, carrying the child, her face ashen. Yan Lia, you're reborn too, aren't you? My heart skipped a beat, but I remained outwardly calm. Comrade Gu, what are you talking about? What rebirth? Stop pretending. Xiaojio glared at me fiercely. In your past life, you didn't send money back to your parents' home. You didn't feed me corn porridge. And you certainly wouldn't have said those things in public that ruined my and Ford's reputation. Yan Lia, you've come back to get revenge on me, haven't you? Just as I was about to continue playing dumb, I caught a glimpse of Liang Ford approaching from the alleyway and immediately raised my voice. Ford, you've come at the right time. Comrade Gu seems to have a mental problem, spouting things I don't understand. This rebirth stuff. It's terrifying. You should take her to see a doctor. Liang Ford's expression changed, and he strode over. Xiaojio bit her lip. Her eyes filled with hatred. But in front of Liang Ford, she didn't say anything more. I watched them with a smile, secretly planning my next move. That evening, Liang Ford returned home very late, carrying the smell of cooking oil wafting from Xiaojio's house next door. He entered the house, saw me lying on the bed, stood for a moment, and finally came over. Lia. About work. I want to discuss it with you. I kept my eyes closed and didn't move. Go ahead. Xiaojio is raising her child alone, without a job, and life is too hard for her. I was thinking, your position is quite easy. Why don't you give it to her? I owe her husband a life, and after repaying that debt, I'll cut off all ties with them. I sneered inwardly. He said the same thing in my past life, speaking so grandly, as if he were the most loyal and righteous person in the world. I agreed, giving my job to Xiaojio, and staying home to serve them like a slave. Later, when the college entrance exam was reinstated, I studied desperately. But before the exam, he persuaded me to write Xiaojio's name on the test paper. Xiaojio went to university, got a good job. And what about me? She became their family's unpaid nanny, wasting her entire life. But this time, I was even more agreeable than he expected. Fine. You say so. Then so be it. Liang Ford was clearly surprised by how smoothly it went. Paused for a moment, then reached out to hold my hand. Lia. Don't worry. I'll take care of you for the rest of my life. I pulled my hand away, turned over. Go to sleep. I still have to go through the handover tomorrow. The next day, I went to the factory to complete my resignation procedures. The supervisor didn't ask many questions, only saying that Xiaojio should report for duty the next day. On my way home, I stopped by a bookstore and bought a few math, physics, and chemistry review materials, which I carried in my pocket. The news of the resumption of the college entrance examination would be announced soon in October 1977, and I had to prepare in advance. The following days were very leisurely. During the day, I would make excuses to go out to buy groceries, but actually I would spend most of the day sitting in the bookstore. After dinner, I would go back to my room to read, and I would postpone housework as much as possible. Liang Ford and Xiaojio were busy sneaking around together and didn't pay much attention to me until mid-October. When the exciting news blared from the loudspeakers on the street, the college entrance exam had been reinstated. I stood by the roadside, clutching my study materials, listening to the announcement repeatedly broadcast, my eyes welling up with tears. In my past life, I had this opportunity too, but Liang Ford and Xiaojio had ruined it. This time, I would never let anyone steal my life again. When I got home, Liang Ford and Xiaojio were indeed there. They were sitting in the main room, exchanging a glance when they saw me come in. Liang Ford cleared his throat. "Lia, I heard the college entrance exam has been reinstated. Do you want to give it a try?" I nodded, yes. Then, he paused. "Could you do Xiaojio a favor? She didn't study much growing up, and her foundation is weak. Can you take the exam for her? Anyway, if she passes, she can go to school, so it won't be a loss for you." I lowered my head, pretended to think for a while, and then slowly raised my head. "Sure. But I'm afraid I won't pass and it will ruin Comrade Gu's future." Xiaojio's eyes lit up. "No way. You'll definitely pass." "Then I'll give it a try." I sighed. "But let me make this clear, don't blame me if I don't pass." For the next month or so, I legitimately locked myself in my room to study, leaving all the housework to Liang Ford and Xiaojio. Liang Ford worked during the day and had to cook and do laundry when he got home at night. He was exhausted, but he didn't dare to complain at all so that I could take the exam for him. Xiaojio was even more attentive, bringing me tea and water every few days, her fawning smile nauseating. On the morning of December 11th, I entered the examination hall, picked up my pen, and neatly wrote my name on the exam paper, Young Lia. When I came out of the examination hall, Liang Ford and Xiaojio were waiting at the door, each more eager than the other. "How did the exam go? Were the questions difficult? Did you pass?" "Not bad," I replied with a smile. Xiaojio was so excited she almost jumped up. "Great. We have to celebrate." Liang Ford, for the first time ever, booked a private room at a state-run restaurant, a table full of dishes, and even bought a bottle of baijiu. The three of us clinked glasses, laughing heartily, each with our own thoughts. I was celebrating the impending escape from this despicable couple. But what were they celebrating? Probably thinking they were paving the way for Xiaojio's bright future. Half drunk, I returned home and went straight to sleep. The next morning, I was woken up by a banging on the door. Liang Ford's mother had come from the countryside, yelling in the yard. "Young Lia, you barren hen. What time is it? Are you dead?" I slowly got up and opened the door. Liang's mother stormed in like a tigress, spitting all over my face. "Why aren't you at work? I heard you quit your job and are just freeloading at home. What use is Ford keeping a barren hen like you?" I stepped back and waited for her to finish her tirade before calmly saying, "Mom, it's not that I don't want to work. It's just that Ford gave my job to his brother's wife. He said he owed her a favor and wanted to repay it." Liang's mother was stunned. "What? Ford gave his job to a widow?" "Yes. And not just the job." I counted on my fingers. "Ford also buys her ribs, eggs, and brown sugar every few days, and goes out late at night to talk to her." "Mom, tell me, am I too useless? I can't even keep my own husband?" Mother Liang's face went from red to white to green. And finally she slapped her thigh. "Where is that little bitch? I'm going to tear her apart today." I tried to stop her twice but couldn't. I watched as Mother Liang rushed out like she was on fire. And then I slowly followed behind to watch the show. Liang's mother stormed into Xiaojio's workplace and, without a word, began punching and kicking her, pulling her hair, slapping her, and hurling insults more vile than a shrew. Xiaojio was beaten black and blue, crying and screaming, while a crowd of onlookers gathered. pointing and gossiping. I waited until things had calmed down before limping over to break up the fight, of course. I wasn't really paying attention. Liang's mother turned and started yelling at me. And I lowered my head, pretending to be wronged. But inside I was overjoyed. This incident quickly spread throughout the surrounding villages about Liang Ford and Xiaojiu's scandalous affair. When Liang Ford arrived, his face was green with anger. But his mother was in a rage. So he didn't dare say anything and just dragged her out. The incident caused quite a stir. And Liang Ford's workplace soon found out as well. His supervisor called him in and gave him a severe scolding, putting his promotion and professional title evaluations on hold, saying they would observe his future performance. Liang Ford returned home dejected and didn't give Xiaojiu a kind look for several days. But to my surprise, a few days later, Liang's mother's attitude suddenly took a complete 180-degree turn. She actually apologized to Xiaojiu and started visiting next door every day, showing concern and care, even more so than a biological mother. I watched coldly, knowing in my heart, Liang Ford and Xiaojiu must have told her the truth, letting her know that the disabled Xiaobao was her own grandson. Sure enough, from that day on, Liang's mother saved all the good food for Xiaobao, and was kind to Xiaojiu. But she became even more harsh on me. She constantly called me a barren hen, cursing me 7 or 8 times a day. She and Xiaojiu conspired to force me to divorce Liang Ford. Of course, I was more than happy to agree. But I had to pretend, Mom. I've been married into the Liang family for 3 years and haven't gotten anything. Not even a job. You can't just kick me out like this. Can you? Liang's mother's eyes darted around. Then, how about I give you some money? After haggling from 200 to 500, I reluctantly nodded. With the 500 yuan in hand, I quickly packed my bags and prepared to leave. But right at the station, Liang Ford caught up with me. He blocked my way, his face covered in sweat, his eyes red. Lia, where are you going? I won't let you go. I gripped the straps of my bag tightly, cursing 1,000 times in my mind. This bastard. He's been haunting me for 2 lifetimes. And he had to jump out and ruin things just when I was about to escape. But I couldn't show it on my face. So I could only cover my face and cry, Ford. I can't have children. I can't carry on the Liang family line. I'm not good enough for you. Please let me go. Liang Ford grabbed me and wouldn't let go. Nonsense. Leah. You're my wife. I only love you for the rest of my life. No one can separate us. He practically dragged me from the station back home. When Liang's mother and Xiaojiu saw me return, their faces were both grim. But Liang Ford had made a harsh statement, and neither of them dared to mention divorce again. Liang's mother was unwilling to accept this and kept urging me to go to the hospital for a checkup, saying, if you can be cured, stay. If not, get out. I was dragged to the hospital for a series of tests, and the results came back. Everything was normal. The doctor looked at my medical records, then at Liang's mother, who had come along, and said tactfully, how about having your son checked too? Infertility isn't always the woman's problem. Liang's mother immediately exploded. Nonsense. How could my son have a problem? She suddenly stopped mid-sentence, as if remembering something. Her expression changed. And finally she glared at me fiercely. Anyway, it's her who's no good. A barren hen. On the way home, Liang's mother cursed all the way, and I didn't say a word back. But I kept thinking about the doctor's words. In my past life, I went for a checkup, and they also said there was nothing wrong with my body. But I just couldn't conceive. Liang Ford always refused to get checked, saying he didn't care about having children. But I later learned that he and Xiaojiu had a son, Xiaobao. If Liang Ford really couldn't have children, then whose child was Xiaobao? The thought, like a snake, slithered into my mind. Impossible to shake off. A few days later, Xiaobao had an accident. Liang's mother took the child out to play, and in a moment of inattention, Xiaobao ran into the middle of the road. A truck couldn't brake in time. Xiaobao was hit, covered in blood, and rushed to the hospital. Xiaojiu fainted on the spot, and Liang Ford half carried, half dragged her to the hospital. Liang's mother wailed and pounded her chest, her cries echoing throughout the alley. I stood outside the crowd, watching all this expressionlessly. In my past life, Xiaobao grew up safely. How could such a tragedy have occurred in this life? I watched coldly. feeling no sympathy whatsoever in my past life. I raised him like my own son for so many years, treating him with all my heart. But after he grew up, he and his mother came to kick me out, pointing their fingers at me and calling me a stupid idiot and a servant. His face was exactly like his father's. A heartless, ungrateful thing. Even if he's just a child. Doesn't deserve my pity. Xiaobao survived. But his left leg was amputated, leaving him disabled. Xiaojiu cried until she was almost blind. Liang Ford looked 10 years older. And Liang's mother's hair turned half white overnight. They cried. But I continued studying and sleeping. My mind preoccupied with only one thing: when would the college entrance exam results be released? Finally, the day arrived. I went to the admissions office early in the morning, squeezing through the crowd to look at the red paper with black characters on the list. When I found the name Yang Lia, the huge weight that had been pressing on my heart for 2 lifetimes finally lifted. I had passed. I could finally leave this filthy place. After filling out my college application and returning home, I had just reached the door when I heard Liang's mother's shrill voice from the yard. Since this child is ruined, why don't you just have another one? Xiaojiu's voice was both aggrieved and anxious. I want one too. But Ford won't register our marriage. I'm a widow with no status. Following him around. What would it look like if I had an illegitimate child? Ford. Liang's mother raised her voice. Say something. What's so good about that barren hen? You should divorce her and marry Xiaojiu. And give me a big, fat grandson. After a long silence, Liang Ford spoke. His voice chillingly cold. Now is not the time for a divorce. Why can't we divorce? I'm applying for a promotion. If I get a divorce now, will my career be ruined? Liang's mother and Xiaojiu both fell silent. I stood outside the door, my nails digging into my palms. So that's how it is. In both my past and present lives, Liang Ford refused to divorce me. All for his own career advancement. He was afraid that divorce would affect his job and promotion. So he was sacrificing my life, making me his free babysitter and shield. Xiaojiu cried again from inside the door. What about Xiaobao and me? Are you planning to waste your life with Yang Lia like this? Xiaobao is like this now. Liang Ford's voice was filled with undisguised calculation. You married me. So you have to take care of him for life. Are you willing to raise a disabled son? Xiaojiu's crying stopped abruptly. Do as I say. Liang Ford said coldly. Let Yang Lia stay. She feels guilty for not being able to have children. So she'll definitely obey us. Let her take care of Xiaobao for you. You can focus on your studies. And in a couple of years we'll have a healthy one. I turned and left. The wind was strong outside, stinging my eyes. But my heart was ice cold. These scumbags are worse than animals. They're scheming to make me take care of their disabled child, while secretly having a healthy one to continue their happy life. Dream on. When I got back that evening, all 3 of them were in the main room. Seeing me come in, Xiaojiu forced a smile and asked, Leah, the results are out. Right. How did you do? I said calmly. I don't know yet. In a couple more days. Xiaojiu visibly relaxed. Then tentatively asked. So, do you think going to university is difficult? I think it's quite difficult. I gave her a meaningful look. But Comrade Gu, with your son like this, who do you plan to entrust him to? You can't exactly send him to an orphanage. Can you? Xiaojiu's face paled. And Liang Ford froze. I smiled and went back inside, leaving them standing outside, looking at each other. That night, I went to bed early as usual. I heard Liang Ford come in twice to check on me, making sure I was asleep before quietly leaving. 15 minutes later, I got up and tiptoed to the neighbor's yard. The door was ajar. The light was on inside, and I could vaguely hear obscene sounds. I coldly retreated to the gate, picked up a few bundles of firewood, piled them in the corner, and struck a match. As the flames leaped up, I yelled at the top of my lungs. Fire! Help! Fire! In the dead of night, my voice cut like a knife through the darkness. Neighbors rushed out with buckets of water, and someone kicked open the gate. The firelight illuminated 2 pale, naked bodies inside, Liang Ford and Xiaojiu, entwined together like 2 skinned snakes. I pushed through the crowd and slapped them twice across the face, then burst into tears, wailing. Adulterous couple. How long have you been cheating on me? Liang Ford. How could you do this to me? Liang Ford's face was red and swollen from my slaps. He opened his mouth to explain. But who among the onlookers would listen? Naked and rolling together. What was there to explain? I pounced on him. Hitting, scratching, and biting. Venting all the hatred I had accumulated over 2 lifetimes. Xiaojiu tried to break up the fight. But I grabbed her hair. Slammed her to the ground. And then straddled her. Giving her a thorough beating. The next day, the factory issued a notice. Liang Ford was suspended from his duties and would face even harsher punishment. Xiaojiu fared even worse. She was fired before her probation period was over. And she slunk away. Their scandalous affair spread throughout the entire county, becoming the laughingstock of the town. When Liang's mother rushed back from the hospital and learned that I had ruined her son's and Xiaojiu's reputations, she flew into a rage, pointing her finger at me and yelling, "It's all your fault. You jinx. If it weren't for you, Ford wouldn't have lost his job. What will you eat and drink from now on?" I didn't let her get away with it and slapped her across the face, leaving her stunned. She covered her face, her fingers trembling as she pointed at me. You dare hit me? I'm going to sue you." "Go ahead," I sneered. "Old lady, let me remind you, legally speaking, your son isn't my husband at all. He and Xiaojiu are the legally married couple. He's been lying to me for 3 years. If this gets to the police, who knows who'll end up in jail." Liang's mother froze, as if grasping at a straw. "Then my son and Xiaojiu are legally married. They're not breaking the law. Ford can still keep his job." She rushed to find Liang Ford, hoping to use this as a lifeline. But it was too late. I had already sent a report to the disciplinary committee, detailing Liang Ford's moral depravity, his marriage fraud, his collusion with Xiaojiu to seize my job, and his conspiracy to make me take the exam for him. The evidence was overwhelming. When the investigation team came down, Liang Ford didn't even have a chance to defend himself. The day he was expelled, he knelt before me, crying with snot and tears streaming down his face. "Lia, I've always loved you. Xiaojiu set a trap for me. She seduced me while I was drunk, and then used the child to blackmail me into getting a marriage certificate. I was forced into lying to you. Please forgive me just this once." I looked down at him and smiled. "Liang Ford, do you think I'm a 3-year-old? You and Xiaojiu have already killed me once. And you still expect me to believe your nonsense?" He suddenly looked up, his face deathly pale. You were reborn too?" "That's right." I nodded. "So put away your hypocritical face. It disgusts me." Liang Ford's eyes changed from pleading to despair, then to malice. "Young Leah, you can't have children. A woman who can't have children. Who would want you after leaving me? Let me tell you, you should be grateful I don't despise you. That's none of your concern." I picked up the acceptance letter on the table and waved it in front of him. "I'm going to university. Liang Ford, you, Xiaojiu, and your crippled son, go ahead and live your lives properly." He completely lost his mind, hurling insults at me, the same ones his mother used on me. I ignored him, grabbed my bag, and left. I ran into Xiaojiu at the alley entrance. She was also insane, disheveled, blocking my way, her eyes red like a rabbit's. "Young Leah, you bitch. You schemed against me." I raised my hand and slapped her twice more, knocking her to the ground. I stepped on her chest, leaned down, and said, word by word, "You'd better behave yourself. You know better than I do whose child Xiaobao is." Xiaojiu's face turned deathly pale, her whole body trembling like a leaf. Her lips quivered. "You. How could you?" I smiled coldly. "Do you want to guess what Liang Ford would do to you if he knew he'd been cuckolded for so many years?" Xiaojiu completely collapsed, unable to even cry. I withdrew my foot, turned, and left. Before boarding the train, I went to see Liang Ford one last time. He'd been fired from his job, utterly dejected like a stray dog. I threw a copy of his infertility report in front of him, and told him that Xiaobao's blood type didn't match either his or Xiaojiu's. He'd been cuckolded twice, raising illegitimate children for 2 lifetimes. After reading the report, Liang Ford's expression shifted from bewilderment to shock to distortion, finally settling into a ferocity I'd never seen before, almost like that of a wild beast. I boarded the train with my luggage, and never saw him again. Later, I heard from a fellow villager that Liang Ford had severely injured Xiaojiu and Xiaobao, and had been sentenced to death. I took a sip of hot water from my enamel mug. gazing at the fields rushing past the window, and let out a long sigh. The train rattled forward, carrying me towards a new city, a new school, a new life. That dreary autumn of 1977 was finally left behind. The train journey took 2 days and 2 nights. The scenery outside the window changed from the lush plateau to fertile plains, and then to rows of buildings. I leaned against the corner of the hard-seat carriage, clutching the canvas bag containing my acceptance letter and all my belongings tightly in my arms, listening to the clanging of the wheels on the rails. I felt a sense of peace I had never felt before. When we arrived at the station, it was just dawn. The morning breeze of Beijing carried the aroma of coal smoke and fried dough sticks. I walked off the platform with my bag on my back, looked up at the gray yet imposing station building, took a deep breath, and couldn't help but laugh out loud. In my past life, I was trapped in that small county town, living a miserable life, never leaving the province until my death. Now, I finally stood on this land, real and alive, not a dream. The school was in the west of the city. I had to ask several people for directions before I finally found it. On registration day, the place was packed with people. Everywhere I looked, there were young people like me, carrying their bedding rolls and their eyes shining. There were 17 or 18-year-olds with their youthful faces, and middle-aged people in their 30s or 40s with their families. I squeezed into the line to fill out forms, get my dormitory key, and carry my luggage. I was busy and sweating profusely, but the corners of my mouth kept turning up. I couldn't suppress it. The dormitory was a small room in a tenement building, with 6 people sharing bunk beds. I was assigned a lower bunk by the window. The girl on the bunk opposite me had a round face and 2 braids. She smiled as soon as she saw me. My name is Chen Hongmei. I'm from Northeast China. And you? Yang Lia. From Shaanxi. Shaanxi is a nice place. Chen Hongmei nimbly jumped down from her bunk to help me make my bed. You came alone. You're really brave. My dad insisted on seeing me off, but I thought he was too nagging, so I ran away on my own. I was amused by her. The girl talked non-stop, like popping beans. And her hands were busy too, quickly making my bed neatly. My other roommates arrived one after another, their accents from all over the country mingling together, chattering and making a ruckus until dark. Lying on the hard bed in my new bunk, with the gray ceiling above me and the sounds of my roommates snoring all around me, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. The tension I'd held since my rebirth finally eased. I thought of my past life, spending my days in that small courtyard washing clothes, cooking, and raising children, wearing patched clothes, eating plain porridge and pickled vegetables, grateful for even a fleeting smile from Liang food. Back then, I thought that was a woman's fate, natural and unquestionable, without even a thought of struggle. But fate slapped me awake, then gave me a second chance at life. This second breath I needed to take was long and deep, to make up for all the suffocation I'd suffered in my past life. The first month of school was incredibly busy. My schedule was packed with courses, math, physics, chemistry, biology, all tough nuts to crack. I spent my days taking notes in class and my nights studying in the library until lights out. My foundation was weak. After all, I'd only had a little over a month to review, and I was far behind the graduating students. Things that others understood in one go, I had to go over 3 or 4 times. And I got so anxious I developed blisters around my lips. Chen Hongmei noticed my anxiety and pulled me to sit in the hallway after evening self-study. Sister Leah, don't push yourself so hard. We're different from those kids. We've suffered before. We know how precious the opportunity to study is. Take it slow. You'll catch up eventually. She was 5 years younger than me, but much more efficient and decisive. Under her guidance, I gradually found my rhythm. My notes grew thicker, and I became more adept at solving problems. By the midterm exam, I had actually made it into the top 10 in my class. The day I received my report card, I clutched that piece of paper and cried in the bathroom, tears streaming down my face uncontrollably. As the days went by, the sycamore trees on campus went from being bare to being covered in new green leaves, and from being densely shaded to having golden fallen leaves. My roommates and I got along like sisters. On weekends, we'd go shopping at department stores, go boating in the park, and eat fried liver on Tiananmen Street. Chen Hongmei loved dragging me to watch outdoor movies. The 2 of us would squat on the playground wrapped in army coats, stamping our feet in the cold but still laughing. But sometimes, I'd wake up in the middle of the night and still dream about those things. I'd dream of Liang Fu's hypocritical face, of Xiaojiu holding a child standing at the door, of that son pointing his finger at me and calling me a servant, of me collapsing on the cold floor, my chest aching and unable to breathe. Every time, I'd wake up in a cold sweat, staring blankly at the dark ceiling for a long time, then slowly calming my rapid breathing and telling myself, it's all over. It's all over. In the winter of my sophomore year, I received a letter from my hometown. My name was scrawled crookedly on the envelope, and the postmark was from the county town. I opened the letter and saw it was from my neighbor, Aunt Lou. The paper was crumpled, and the handwriting was uneven, but the content made me stand at the dormitory door for a long time, holding the letter. Aunt Lou said that Liang Ford had been sentenced to death and had already been executed. Xiaojiu was seriously injured and left disabled, and her child had been sent to an orphanage. Liang's mother had gone mad, wandering the streets all day, grabbing anyone she saw and saying, "My grandson is a bastard." Later, she was taken away by her relatives, and no one knew where she went. Aunt Lou also mentioned my parents, saying that they were in good health, and they had saved the money I sent back. My younger brother had been admitted to a teacher's college, and their lives were getting better every day. I folded the letter and put it back in the envelope, then took out the letter and read it for the third time. I couldn't describe the feeling in my heart. Was it satisfying? A little. But more than that. There was an empty calm, like watching a long play, where the characters either died, went mad, or scattered. And I was the only one left on the stage, ready to turn around and leave. I locked the letter in the drawer and never mentioned it to anyone again. A few days later, Chen Hongmei mysteriously dragged me to the playground, saying someone was looking for me. I saw a tall, thin boy standing under a locust tree, clutching a book. He blushed when he saw me and stammered, Yang Lia. This book you said you wanted to borrow last time. I brought it for you." It was Zhang Jianguo from the physics department. I often bumped into him at the library. We were just nodding acquaintances. I took the book and flipped through it. There was a note inside that read, "Can I invite you to a movie this weekend?" I was stunned. Chen Hongmei nudged my lower back and winked at me. I looked up at Zhang Jianguo's face, which was practically convulsing with nervousness, and suddenly remembered how Liang Ford had been pursuing me in my past life, looking just as flustered. But back then, I was only focused on finding a man to marry and settle down with without really considering whether he was worth it. This time was different. I closed the book, smiled, and shook my head. "I have plans for the weekend." "Sorry." Zhang Jianguo's face immediately fell, and Chen Hongmei was so anxious she was stamping her feet. After he left dejectedly, Chen Hongmei grabbed me. "Sister Leah. He's such a good catch. Why did you turn him down?" "I didn't come here to date." I handed the book back to Chen Hongmei. "All I want in this life is to study hard and live a good life. Men. Well, let fate decide." Chen Hongmei muttered, "You're so stubborn," and then, smiling, took my arm and went back to the dormitory. I didn't tell her those awful things, but I knew very well in my heart, I no longer saw finding a man as my life's destination. I would walk my own path, step by step. In my junior year, the department organized an internship at a factory, and I was assigned to the technical department of a state-owned machinery factory. My mentor was an elderly engineer in his 50s, with graying hair and wearing glasses with one arm missing and taped back. On our first meeting, he tossed me a stack of blueprints, "Read them, and report back to me in 3 days." I stayed up 3 nights in a row to memorize them. The old engineer tested me on a few questions, which I answered haltingly. He nodded noncommittally, and the next day he tossed me an even thicker stack. A month passed like this, and then he suddenly said in front of the entire department at a meeting, "This young Yang is good. He has a solid foundation, is willing to work hard, and is better than the previous batches of young men." After the meeting, I chased after him and called out, "Master Wang, could you teach me more in the future?" He glanced back at me, pushed up his worn-out glasses, and said, "Want to learn? Come to the office at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning." From then on, I got up at 5 o'clock every morning, arrived at the office before 6, and learned drafting, processes, and equipment principles from Master Wang. then stayed up late at night to catch up on my studies. He taught me meticulously. And I studied with all my might. After 6 months, I could independently produce a complete set of tooling drawings. On the day I left, Master Wang, for the first time ever, patted me on the shoulder. "Girl, if you have nowhere to go after graduation, come back and find me." My nose tingled. And I nodded vigorously. When it came time for job assignments after graduation, 3 companies wanted me to stay at the university as a teacher, to return to the Design Institute in my hometown's provincial capital, and to work at Master Wang's machinery factory. Chen Hongmei advised me to stay at the university, saying it was a relaxed and respectable job. A letter from home said the provincial capital was close by and would be convenient for taking care of me. I sat in my dormitory all night, looking over and over the 3 offers, and finally put a checkmark in the machinery factory section. No one understood my choice. Even Master Wang was stunned when he received my call. "You're coming. This factory is remote. And the pay isn't as good as in the provincial capital. I want to learn from you," I said. "I'm a woman, with no background or connections. My only asset is my skills." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. Then the old man's hearty laughter. "Okay. Come on over. I'll save you a place." I reported for duty at the end of August. The plane trees in the factory area provided ample shade, and the cicadas' chirping was deafening. Master Wang led me to the dormitory, the canteen, and the workshop. After walking around, my trousers were covered in machine oil, but my heart was warm. The next day, I officially started work. When I changed into my blue overalls and put on white gloves, standing next to the machine tool, the sunlight shone through the high windows, shining brightly on the gleaming metal parts, making my eyes sting. I remembered that autumn of 1977. The way I stood at the factory gate, lost in thought. The image of Yang Lia, who only knew how to be a slave to her husband. The image of Yang Lia collapsing on the cold floor, coughing up blood. Several years had passed. Yang Lia seemed like a distant relative from a past life, blurred, unfamiliar, finally unrelated to me. I reached out and touched the 3 characters Yang Lia on my newly issued work badge, bent down to pick up a blueprint, and started working. Life went on uneventfully. I stayed at the factory for 5 years. I worked my way up from technician to assistant engineer, and then from assistant engineer to engineer. The year Master Wang retired, he strongly recommended me to take over his position as head of the technical department. The factory leaders held 2 rounds of meetings to discuss it, and finally approved it. On my first day as head of the department, I treated all my colleagues in the technical department to a meal at a restaurant. After a few rounds of drinks, someone egged me on to say a few words. I stood up, glass in hand, looking at the young faces around the table, newly assigned college graduates, experienced workers promoted from the workshop, men and women, some spirited, some cautious and reserved, so much like myself back then, all brimming with energy, eager to earn a place in this world. I said, "I only have one thing to say, for us technicians. Getting things done is the only true measure of success. No matter if you're male or female, no matter your background. If you understand the blueprints and can repair the machines skillfully, everyone will respect you. Just work hard, and you'll never go wrong." Everyone applauded and cheered. I downed half a glass of baijiu, the spiciness making me hiss. Sitting back down, Chen Hongmei, who later also worked in Beijing and visited me every few days, leaned over and whispered, "Sister Leah, you really look like an official now. A few years ago, when I first met you, who would have thought you'd be doing this well?" I picked up a piece of peanuts and chewed, replying vaguely, "Who would have thought?" On the way back to the dormitory after dinner, the crescent moon hung in the sky, and the cool breeze dispelled most of the effects of the alcohol. I walked slowly, my mind hazy with the events of the past few years. Sometimes I felt that this rebirth was like a grand dream, and sometimes I felt that my past life was the dream. I couldn't tell anymore. And it didn't matter. What mattered was that I was walking this path now, steadily and firmly, each step solid. As I passed the factory gate, the old man at the gatehouse poked his head out and called to me, "Section Chief Yang, there's a letter for you. It arrived this afternoon." I took it and saw that the envelope had my hometown address on it, and the handwriting was my younger brother's. I opened the letter, and inside was a photo. My parents were sitting in the yard, basking in the sun. Their hair mostly white but in good spirits. My younger brother stood behind them, holding his newborn daughter. His smile beaming. The letter said they had built a new house. And that my parents were in good health. It told me not to send money back so often, but to keep it for myself. I turned the photo over. On the back was written, "Sister. We're doing well now. When can you come back to visit? Your little brother." I stood under the street lamp, clutching the photo, the warm yellow light illuminating their smiling faces, and gazed at it for a long, long time. The wind rustled the letter. I folded it and put it in my work pocket, looking up at the crescent moon, like a smiling eye. "Okay," I muttered to myself, referring to the sentence in the letter. "I'll come back after the new year." Then I turned, pushed open the factory gate, and stepped into the warm glow of the night. The train back to my hometown was on the 28th of the 12th lunar month. The hard-seat carriage was packed like sardine cans. The aisle was full of people. Children were crying and adults were shouting. The air was filled with the smell of instant noodles and food odor. I huddled in a window seat, a canvas bag on my lap containing cotton-padded coats for my parents, pastries for my younger brother and sister-in-law, and a pair of red woolen socks I had knitted for my little niece. Next to me sat a young woman holding a crying baby, who was sweating profusely as she tried to soothe him. I helped her take the baby bottle down from the luggage rack and then helped her mix some warm water to feed the baby. Only then did she breathe a sigh of relief and start a conversation with me. "Sister, are you also going home for the new year?" "Yes. I haven't been back for several years." "Do you work in the city?" "Yes. At a technical factory." She looked me up and down a few times, with an indescribable envy in her eyes. "It's so good that you can come out and make your own way in the world." "I'm married and stay at home taking care of the children. I can't go anywhere." I didn't reply and turned my gaze to the window. On both sides of the railway were vast expanses of gray-yellow land, with a few low farmhouses occasionally flashing by, red lanterns hanging under the eaves, already exuding the atmosphere of the new year. I remembered that at this time in my previous life, I was busy at the stove in the Liang family's house, steaming buns, frying meatballs, and stewing meat. Liang Ford's mother was sitting in the main room, picking and choosing melon seeds, while Xiaojio was holding her child in the next yard waiting for me to bring the hot dishes over. Back then, I always smelled of cooking oil. My fingers were cracked, and my back ached so much I could barely stand. But on New Year's Eve, when Liang Food said, "Thank you for your hard work," I felt it was all worth it. How silly of me. It was already dark when the train arrived at the station. Someone called my name outside the exit. I looked up and saw my younger brother, Yang Jiangwo, standing under a street lamp, wearing a half-new down jacket, his face red from the cold. As soon as he saw me, he waved vigorously. "Sister, over here." I hurried over, and he took my bag, grinning. "Sister, you've lost weight, but you look more energetic. Come on. Mom has already made all the dumplings, just waiting for you." The way back wasn't far. My younger brother borrowed a bicycle, put a thick cotton pad on the back seat for me to sit on, and pedaled furiously in front. The night wind was chilly, but he kept rambling on and on. Dad was in good health, playing chess at the village entrance every day. Mom's eyesight was a little failing, but she was still very capable. His wife taught at the town's primary school, and their daughter could call him Dad now. I leaned against his back, listening to his breathless chatter, my eyes welling up several times. When I pushed open the courtyard gate, the light in the main room was bright. My mother came out of the kitchen carrying a tray of dumplings. She froze when she saw me, the tray clattering down on the steps, dumplings scattering everywhere. She rushed over and hugged me, her voice trembling. "You're back. It's good you're back. It's good you're back." My father came out of the house, standing under the eaves with his hands behind his back, his face tense, but his eyes were also red. "Come inside. It's cold outside." That night, we made pork and cabbage dumplings, and I ate 2 big bowls. My sister-in-law was soothing the child. My brother and my dad were drinking, and my mom sat next to me, holding my hand and stroking it several times, muttering, "You've lost weight. And your hands are calloused. You must have suffered a lot out there." "No. I'm fine." I squeezed her thin, dry hand back. Her palm was hard and warm. "Mom, I'm an engineer now. A section chief. My salary is enough to live on. I don't lack anything. She smiled, her eyes narrowing into slits, saying repeatedly, good, good, and then asked, then, what about finding a partner? You're not getting any younger. Are you? No rush. Why not? People your age in the village already have kids in elementary school. Mom. I put a dumpling in her bowl. I'll live my own life. Don't worry about it. She wanted to say something more, but my dad interrupted her by tapping the table with his pipe. The child has his own ideas. Don't interfere. The old lady pursed her lips but didn't bring it up again. On New Year's Eve, the whole family stayed up late, huddled around the stove, cracking melon seeds and watching TV. The TV was newly installed in the village. The signal was poor, and the screen was filled with static. But everyone still watched with great interest. I leaned on my mother's shoulder, listening to the continuous sounds of firecrackers outside, smelling the burning firewood and the sour aroma of dumplings and vinegar inside the house. And the tension in my heart finally eased completely. After the 5th day of the new year, I was leaving. My mother stuffed a large bag of things into my hands, her own pickled vegetables, dried green beans, fried dough twists, and a new pair of cloth shoes with a 1,000-layered sole, the stitches dense and even. I carried the bag to the village entrance, and the whole family came out to see me off. My mother followed behind, wiping away tears. My father stood with his hands behind his back at the gate, and my younger brother, holding his daughter, called out, "Sister, stay a few more days next time." I turned back and waved to them, my eyes crinkling with a smile. Okay. Go back now. Back at the factory, I was busy as soon as spring arrived. The factory was starting a new project, importing a set of equipment. Master Wang, now I should call him Old Wang, retired but rehired as a technical consultant, nominated me to lead the project. The drawings were all in foreign languages, and there was a mountain of technical parameters. I led a few people from the technical department through it for over half a month, translating and digesting the information. Then we spent a whole week coordinating with the German engineer sent by the equipment supplier. That German was Hans, a tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed man who spoke quickly and forcefully. Sometimes even the translator couldn't keep up. For the first 2 days, we struggled to communicate. He could argue for 2 hours about a single symbol on the drawings. But on the 3rd day, his attitude suddenly changed. He offered to take me to the workshop for on-site testing and even showed me his technical manual. The translator told me privately, "Mr. Hans said you're the first technician he's met in China who can recite equipment parameters to 3 decimal places. He respects you very much." I smiled and didn't say anything, continuing to look at the drawings. I've always remembered Old Wang's teachings. In the technical field, there's no room for pretense. If you have real skills, people will respect you wherever you go. On the day of the project acceptance, Hans said to me in broken Chinese, "You're very capable," then handed me a business card, saying I could contact him if I wanted to study in Germany later. The factory leaders watched with beaming smiles. After the meeting, they called me to their office and told me there was a spot for full-time training in Beijing in the second half of the year, and I should prepare. Life went on busily like this. Projects one after another. I rose from section chief to deputy factory director. And at 43, I officially took over as factory director. On my first day in office, the factory office prepared a large bouquet of flowers for me, but I waved them away, leaving only my drawing tools, which I'd used for over 10 years. In the center of my desk, the metal ruler was worn smooth. The compass tip had broken once, and Old Wang had rewelded it back on for me. After becoming factory director, I traveled more frequently, all over the country. Sometimes, when I passed by my alma mater on my way to meetings in Beijing, I would stop by for a visit. The sycamore trees had grown taller, the dormitories had been renovated, and a library had been added next to the canteen. Standing at the entrance, watching the young faces coming and going, I would vaguely see myself back then, wearing an old cotton-padded coat, carrying a canvas bag, and having taken a 3-day train ride from a small county in Shaanxi to register. Once, I saw an old photo on the bulletin board at the library entrance, taken at a reunion of the class of '77 alumni. I leaned closer and found Chen Hongmei's round face in the corner of the last row of the crowd. She had gained some weight and was smiling even more brightly, with her husband and child standing beside her. I smiled, turned, and walked away. There were times when I was tired. One winter, the factory was rushing to meet orders, and I worked overtime for more than 20 days in a row. One night, I came out of the workshop. My legs gave way, and I almost fell on the steps. I held onto the railing and squatted for a while until the dizziness subsided. I slowly stood up and looked up at the moon overhead, just like the one I had seen many years ago at the factory gate. Crescent-shaped, clear and cold. Suddenly, I remembered what happened when I was reborn. I remembered Liang Ford kneeling on the ground begging for my forgiveness. Xiaojiu's twisted face as I trampled under my feet. And that son's sneer at me, saying, "You're just a servant." Those faces are so distant now. Blurred. Like looking through frosted glass. But the pain seems to linger in my bones, seeping out subtly when the weather turns cold. I rubbed my arms, pushed open the office building door, and went inside. The office lights were still on. A stack of documents on the desk awaited approval, and the half-full thermos had long since cooled. I sat down, uncapped my pen, and began reading the reports and statements line by line, signing my name on the last one, Yang Lia. The 3 characters written neatly. I retired at 56. On the day I left, all the middle and upper management of the factory came to see me off. The old workers in the workshop crowded at the door, shouting, "Director Yang, come back and visit often." My successor, the deputy director, a woman in her early 40s from northeast China, whose voice was even louder than Chen Hongmei's, held my hand tightly, refusing to let go. "Sister Yang, if you have time, come and teach me. I'm afraid I won't understand it myself." I patted her on the shoulder. "You're much better than I was back then, so don't worry about it." I bought a train ticket back to my hometown. My younger brother said on the phone that our parents were getting old and their legs weren't as strong. So he wanted to renovate our old house and asked me to come back and give him my advice. I said okay. Returned the house allocated to me by the factory. Packed several boxes of books and blueprints, and the compass and T-square set that old Wang had given me before he retired, and sent them all back. As the train started moving, I leaned against my berth, watching the city where I had lived for more than 30 years slowly recede outside the window. The figures of the people seeing me off on the platform grew smaller and smaller, and the factory buildings, chimneys, and sycamore trees all became a blur. I closed my eyes, the clanging of the train wheels on the tracks echoing in my ears. Exactly the same as when I first rode this train more than 40 years ago. Back then, I clutched an acceptance letter, had 500 yuan in my pocket, and was burning with determination. I was going to make something of myself, to show everyone who had wronged me that Yang Lia wasn't someone to be trifled with. Now, that determination was long gone, leaving only a calm stillness in my heart, like a lake warmed by the autumn sun on a sunny afternoon. Undisturbed, I opened my eyes and saw my reflection in the train window. Wrinkles had appeared, and more gray hairs had sprouted, but my eyes were bright, steady, and resolute. Good. The train headed west. Home. When I came out of the train station, my younger brother, Yang Jiangwo, came to pick me up again, this time in a slightly worn white minivan, which he said he bought with money he earned from running a transport business in the village. He helped me load several heavy cardboard boxes into the trunk, filled with technical documents, work notes, and a few well-worn foreign language reference books I'd accumulated over the years. As he carried them, he clicked his tongue. "Sis, your retirement is more tiring than your working life. You brought back a pile of bricks." I laughed and patted him on the back. "What do you know? These are treasures." The car drove out of the county town and along the country road into the village. The poplar trees on both sides of the road were twice as tall as I remembered, their branches intertwining to form an archway overhead. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting alternating shadows on the windshield. My brother kept talking. The village had paved roads, running water, new houses for every household, and a small square at the east end of the village where people danced in the evenings. Listening, I felt a sense of both familiarity and strangeness. As I turned into the village, I immediately saw the old locust tree. It was still there, thicker and stronger than before. A few old men sat around a cement platform at the base of the tree, playing chess. My father sat among them, his back slightly hunched, but his movements as he placed the pieces were still as steady as ever. My younger brother parked the car, and I got out, calling out, "Dad." He looked up, squinted at me for several seconds, then pushed the chess pieces aside, stood up, and said, "You're back. Come on. Let's go home." His words were still concise, but the smile on his lips was impossible to hide. The courtyard had been renovated. The main house had new red tiles, and an extra room had been added to the east wing, supposedly for me. My mother heard the commotion and came out of the kitchen, her apron covered in flour. She wiped her hands on the apron several times before pulling me aside, scolding, "You didn't even tell me you were coming back. So I could have killed a chicken." I said it wasn't necessary, and she waved her hand, saying it was no trouble at all. Then turned and called for my sister-in-law to go to the chicken coop to catch a chicken. The room reserved for me wasn't big, but it was bright and clean. There was a wooden bed, a desk, and a wardrobe. On the desk sat a vase of wildflowers, picked by my sister-in-law. I stacked the boxes of books one by one on the bookshelf, placed the compass and T-square old Wong had given me on the desk near the window, and pulled out a thick, hardcover notebook from the bottom. The cover read Technical Notes, a notebook I'd kept since my first year at the factory, for over 30 years. Opening to the first page. The date was written in blue pen, September 3rd, 1981. My first day at work. The handwriting was childish, the strokes restrained, a stark contrast to my later, flamboyant signature. Below was the first sentence Master Wong had taught me that day, when looking at blueprints. Look at the title block first. Don't just stare at the lines and speculate. I stared at that line for a long time, as if I could see that gray-haired old man pushing up his worn glasses, sternly scolding me. I closed the notebook and neatly put it in the drawer. Dinner was indeed plentiful: stewed chicken, scrambled eggs, cold dishes, and a plate of cured meat. My dad, unusually, opened a bottle of wine and poured me a glass too. As our glasses clinked, my dad said, "Your life hasn't been easy. You've made it all on your own." "I know that." He then downed his drink. My mom wiped her eyes beside me, and my brother and sister-in-law also raised their glasses. My little niece, now in middle school, held up her soda and, mimicking an adult, said, "Auntie, I toast you," making everyone at the table laugh. After dinner, I went for a walk to digest, strolling slowly along the village path. It wasn't completely dark yet. The western clouds were ablaze with orange-red. The wheat seedlings in the fields were lush and green, and the air was filled with the fresh scent of earth and grass. Reaching the east end of the village, I saw the small square. The cement ground was smooth and even. The street lights were on, and several middle-aged women were dancing the yanko with music playing, while children chased after balls nearby. I sat on a stone bench by the square for a while when an older woman wearing a headscarf approached and asked, "Are you old Yang's eldest daughter? Your mother said you're back home?" "Yes. I just retired and came back to keep my parents company." "Oh, that's wonderful," the woman exclaimed, slapping her thigh. "You must be a factory manager out there." "Right. My husband always talks about you, saying you went to university and became very successful. Of all the girls from our village, you're the most successful." I smiled but didn't reply. In the distance, a little girl with pigtails chased a ball to my feet. I picked it up and handed it to her. She said thank you, Grandma, in a childish voice, and ran off again. I paused, looking down at myself: a gray-blue coat, black pants, flat cloth shoes, gray streaks in my hair, and wrinkles on my face. Wasn't I already of grandmotherly age? But I felt no sadness at all. This is the age I've lived a life of steady progress, every step taken with integrity, and I have no regrets. After my walk, I went home to find my mother sitting in the main room watching TV. She called me over to sit next to her. It was a family drama, and she was watching intently, occasionally muttering, "That guy is so mean," or "That wife is so pitiful." I leaned on her shoulder, smelling the mingled scent of laundry detergent and stove fire on her, my mind completely blank, just sitting there quietly. After a while, she suddenly said, "Leah, you've never settled down in your life. Do you regret it?" I shook my head. "No regrets." "Really no regrets?" "Mom." I held her hand. The skin on the back of her hand was loose, with age spots scattered about. "I'd done so many things in my life, much more interesting than settling down and raising kids. Besides, I have you and Dad, and my younger brother's family. I'm not alone." She was silent for a moment. Then gently patted the back of my hand. Okay. As long as you're doing well. That night, I lay on my newly made bed, listening to the crickets chirping outside the window, and slept very soundly, without a single dream. The next morning, I was woken up by the crowing of roosters and the chirping of birds. When I opened my eyes, sunlight was already streaming in through the gaps in the curtains, casting a long golden strip on the wall. I put on my clothes, got up, and opened the window. My mother was feeding the chickens in the yard. My father was wiping his reading glasses under the eaves, and the aroma of millet porridge wafted from the kitchen. Everything moved slowly and leisurely, so calming that it brought peace of mind. I put on my pair of cloth shoes with the 1,000-layered soles, the same pair my mother made for me when I left home. I'd worn them for years. The soles worn thin. But I couldn't bear to throw them away. So I asked my sister-in-law to add another layer, and stretched in the yard. My mother turned around, saw me, and smiled, saying, "The porridge is in the pot. The pickled vegetables are in the cupboard. And the eggs are boiled. Peel them yourself." I responded and went to the kitchen to get the porridge. I sat on the doorstep, holding a bowl of hot millet porridge, and drank it. The sun shone warmly on me, and in the distance, I could hear the chugging of tractors in the fields, while sparrows chirped nearby in the locust tree. Suddenly, I thought about how, since that autumn of 1977, I'd traveled across most of China, spent countless sleepless nights in noisy workshops, argued with people about technical solutions in meeting rooms, and signed my name thousands upon thousands of times in piles of documents. After running so far, she finally returned to a sun-drenched courtyard, drinking a bowl of millet porridge. But things are different now. The young Leah of yesteryear escaped, driven by hatred and reckless courage. The young Leah of today returned willingly, carrying her own stories and skills, settling down peacefully to live her own life. I finished my porridge and went to the kitchen for another bowl.